My name's Sharron Pickering, and I joined the Wrens in 1989 when I was 20 years old, the Women's Royal Naval Service. I'd been brought up in a military family. My dad was in the Royal Engineers, and I had always wanted to, one, be a police officer, and secondly, to join the army. And long story short, I went through all three services, experienced the assessment career centres, and decided on the Navy. So in 1989 I left Germany for my parents' married quarter and went off and joined HMS Raleigh. I loved it, absolutely loved it. It was everything that I wanted. I was, life in a blue suit, as they say in the Navy, and loved it. I did my basic training and I was posted to HMS Dryad, where I did my Phase 2 training, which was a radar, and then I became ship's company on HMS Dryad. And I was going great guns. I'd graduated with the highest ever grade average that they'd had there. It was 99.9%. I dropped 1% in 6 exams. So I got Top Student Award, and I was doing very, very well. I'd been recommended, if I wanted to stay in the Navy, to go through and consider commissioning. And I was quite happily working towards that. But there was something that was behind me, deep inside, that I was trying to balance a career with in the Royal Navy with my own personal feelings and my own identity. And I knew being gay conflicted with life in the service. It was illegal. It was illegal in 1989 to be gay in the military. So I had a really, really tough time coming to terms with who I was, because if I could act on my own feelings, it would mean that I would have to surrender or risk losing my career that I wanted. And in 1991, that actually happened to me. I had been investigated by the Special Investigation Branch of the police, and after a very long investigation and very public investigation, lots of media crews got to know about it. News of the World had a phone in as to whether I should keep my job or not by their readers, and I was subsequently dismissed from HMS Sultan. I had to go before the captain, and I was thrown out at the age of 21. I was absolutely devastated. I didn't know what to do with myself. My parents came from Germany. I spent my last 6 days in the Navy, actually in a jail cell at HMS Sultan. My parents were coincidentally dropping my brother off at Sixth Form College in Buxton when I was discharged, and they came to Sultan and picked me up and sort of rushed me back to Germany to their married quarters. And I was very, very poorly. I was very unwell. I suppose I think they kind of probably call it a nervous breakdown back in those days. But 1991, 21 years old, not in a good place, living with my parents, and I basically spent about 6 months in my bedroom. Wouldn't communicate with anyone, wouldn't talk to anyone. The only person I did engage with was my 18-month-old nephew. My sister used to open the bedroom door. My nephew would come in, I would play with him on the floor, I'd open the door, he'd go back out, and I'd stay back in my bedroom. And I had a really, really tough time in those times, and I think I was acutely mentally unwell. My parents didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to deal with it. I wouldn't engage with the medical officer in Germany, so couldn't get any treatment or anything. And that lasted for a long, long time. I eventually moved back to England, went out on my own and moved back to England, and I'd had other relationships, but this isn't about the other relationships, this is about my journey back. And I kind of bummed around for about 12 years, not really settling in jobs and not knowing what I wanted to do, and at the back of me I kept thinking that I wanted to still be a police officer. But I was so scared of applying to the police for fear of them rejecting me like the Navy had done. I don't think I could have handled it. So at 32, I kind of thought, you know what, if I don't do it now, if I don't put my big girl pants on and actually go for that interview, I'm going to become too old, and I'm going to, never ever do that side of it. So lo and behold, I went for the interview, and I only went and got the job. And I thought that it was going to replace everything that I missed so much and hid so much from the Royal Navy. And I went on to, be a sergeant in Northamptonshire Police, and absolutely loved it. I kind of felt I had a home again, but it wasn't quite the same as being in the military. You didn't, in the military, you kind of, you work together, you sleep together, you eat together, you've all shared the same dorms and stuff. It's not like that in the police. It's much more civilian, it's much more isolated. You have your crews that you work with, but you all go home to your own houses at night and your own families and stuff. And I think I always missed that. And then in 2022, I think it was, there was the Atherton report. A call for evidence came out for veterans that had been dismissed from the military, and I sat down and started to write my evidence about what had happened to me in the military, and I hadn't really spoken about it. I'd never dealt with it. I just tucked it away somewhere deep inside here, and I started writing what had happened to me in the Navy, the investigations, the psychiatric assessments, the jail time, the intrusion, the loss of my career, the loss of my identity, the loss of my pension, the loss of my home, the loss of my friends, and it all mounted up to a great big loss. And I think at that point, everything that I'd experienced in the police that I hadn't dealt with either, or the traumas that we experience as police officers, the fatal car crashes, the children's deaths, the assaults on other people, the assaults on us, and I think reliving everything that happened to me in the Navy really came to a head, and it affected me in my job as a police officer, and I was subsequently diagnosed with complex PTSD, and I became acutely unwell again and ended up being medically retired from the police, and I was in a really, I thought I'd been in a bad place with the Navy, and I thought I'd been in a bad place at some of the trauma I'd experienced with the police. But it wasn't until I had nothing. I didn't know who I was going to be. If I couldn't be Ren Pickering, and I couldn't be 912 Pickering, Sergeant 912 Pickering, who the hell was I going to be? Because I really didn't know who I was. And that was the most frightening thing, not the complex PTSD diagnosis, because I didn't feel worthy of that. How could I possibly have CPTSD when I hadn't been to a war zone? I hadn't been to Ireland like my dad, and I hadn't been to Iraq or Afghanistan. I hadn't had limbs blown up off me, so how could I have complex PTSD? And it wasn't until I had about 3 years of intensive therapy, and then the Atherton report was released, and part of the restoration process was the reparation service for me in the Navy was to go to HMS President and have my service certificate, my berry back, and of course my Atherton ribbon. And I was like, yeah, I think I want to do that. I think I want to do it. And I knew it was going to take huge amounts of courage to do. And I went down to President with my partner, Joe. And I realised I just couldn't do this. I couldn't step foot on another military base 34 years later. And I basically had a meltdown outside. I thought, I can't go, I can't do this. I was sweating, I was crying. And thought, no, this isn't worth it. A Navy berry is just not worth going through this. And my partner basically said, she wanted to go and she needed me to get in, so I better get my backside up and go with her. So that's what I did. And when I went in there, there was a Royal Navy captain, and she came and asked me if I was okay, and I said yeah, and she said, are you really okay? And I was like, no, and just went outside and cried again. And I kind of pulled myself together and I came back in, and that captain was stood there in full #1 dress talking to my partner, and the captain was talking about her wife. And for 34 years I had always wondered why me? Why had I had to go through this? And standing there listening to that captain, who's now one of my very, very good friends, Sam, and she was talking about her wife, and I just suddenly thought, this is why I had to go through what I did, to allow Sam to serve and others like her and be their true authentic selves. And it was like a light bulb moment. This is why I had to go through what I went through, to allow others to live the life that I was so desperate to live. And it was like, as I say, it was like a light bulb moment. Suddenly it was like, okay, but where do I go from here? And from that moment, I always say that I lost 2 careers through the ban on gays in the military. First of all, I lost my naval career, and then reliving through the trauma of it, added with the trauma from the policing, I lost my second career in the policing. But what I gained from it is my tribe, my people, my RN family, my veteran family. I was asked recently when I always say that I'd lost my career, my finances, my home, my pension, my identity. I lost myself for those 34 years. And I was asked quite recently when I found myself again. And it was on that day, it was October the 23rd, 2024, I found a purpose. I realised why I'd had to go through what I went through. And in return, I've got my tribe back, I've got myself back, I've got my pride back. And I kind of thought, if I can do this journey after everything that I've gone through, there must be a way of me helping others to do that journey as well. And towards the end of last year, I plucked up the courage and I applied to Fighting with Pride, the LGBT veterans charity, because I wanted to help other people kind of navigate the journey that I'd been through in order for them to feel the benefits that I had felt, reconnecting with the military, reconnecting with veterans and reconnecting with yourself. So I am now 15 months through my journey of stepping foot onto HMS President. 15 months since Joe, my partner, made me get my backside up and get in there. 15 months since meeting Captain Sam. And 15 months since growing my network of veterans. I am now realising that my service did count. I counted, my feelings counted, that I could be gay and I could serve, just not that at that time. And all the changes and all the policies weren't what brought people like me back to their services. It was the people. It was the people saying to us, welcome back, you should never have left, you should never have been forced to leave. It's the people that have welcomed us back with humility and grace and kindness and openness. And they are the people in my life that count. Doesn't matter what a policy said. It didn't matter that it was wrong from 1967 to year 2000. It doesn't matter that it is right now. It just matters that people accept people for who they are. And if I can help one person through my job as a veteran community worker with Fighting with Pride, navigate that journey so that they can look at themselves in the mirror in the morning and actually like that person looking back at them, then I'm still serving.